Warning: tube amplifiers have lethal voltages inside them. Please do not attempt to build, test, or repair these without understanding and following all safety protocols. Hey y'all! Well, it's time for round 2 of the output transformer shootout. And the reason I even decided to do this was the customer sent me these little guys to use in a build. And I'm kind of baffled because somebody, one of the guys on the forums, built him a 300B amp using the little 15 watt EdCore transformers, and he asked this guy, what would be an upgrade to these for my 300B amp, and he told him to buy these little tiny guys, and they're only 7 watts. That's less than what a 300B amp should be making. And so anyway, he said that he didn't want to drill his chassis, and he wanted one of my 283 amps, and he's like, I've got these transformers. I was like, well, send them. Then after I did some research on them, I was like, I don't know about this. Let me test these things. And yeah, anyway, so we're going to be testing these guys. My buddy Oak Mountain Man sent me these big Hashimoto EI core guys, and these look familiar. I used the 7K, 10K version of this on my little 45 globe tube amp, and so I know they sound good, but I never really tested them. So we'll get to test these guys, this guy, and then we've got the Tango FC12S's that I've used as an upgrade transformer for my EL34 amp, that I know from AB listening they have a real clarity and cleanness to their sound, and I'm interested to see how they actually test versus all these other ones. And we're testing the THD versus power, then we're testing the square wave, we're looking at the frequency response, that's the big one, and then we're looking at the THD versus frequency to see where the transformers struggle and where they shine. So let's get busy testing these mid-price transformers. Okay, so the next one up for the testing is the Hashimoto HC-203-U, which is almost $100 more than the Haber transformer. And especially when you include shipping and stuff, it probably is going to be $100 each more. So we had that little 3 transformer grouping at the low price level, and so we're going to have another grouping that's going to be in this 230 to 280 range. And so this first one is the EI core type Hashimoto, and it's 4.25 pounds, and it's a 3.5K or a 2.5K, and it does have 4, 8, and 16 ohm taps, which some of these other ones, like the musical power supply, only had 8 ohm taps. The Haber's got 4 and 8, and the EdCore only has 8. And so if you need multiple output taps, this Hashimoto might be what you're looking for. And it's got really nice looking performance. This little upward curve starts about a half a watt later, and it's still at this 0.85 volt RMS point, and where the musical power supply and the EdCore, that turn up started about right here at 4 watts. And so you pick up about a half a watt of power on the upper end. Let's go look at the frequency response, and this will be also at 4.5 watts, and yeah, it's nice and flat too. Again, this area along in here is basically 0 dBs. At 20 hertz, we're down 1 dB, and at 20K, we're down, a little less than 3/4 of a dB, which is almost nothing. And the 3 dB roll off on the bottom end is again right at that 13, 12 hertz range. It's actually 12 hertz on this, so really nice low frequency response. Zip over to our scope here. This is at 1K, and you can see there's no funny business going on here. It's got a very smooth little front overshoot here, very similar to that Haybuer. And then when you go to 10K, it's a little messy in here, but it's nothing like the Edcore. But still not as smooth as that Haybuer was. And then we come over here to this frequency versus THD. And again, down at 20 hertz, we've got 13%, where the musical power supply had 9. But both of them, by the time they get to 100 hertz, are pretty leveled off. And so, not going to fault this at all for this curve that this one's showing. And when we look at the second order harmonic distortion, it's got quite a bit of that compared to the third order, especially down at these low frequencies. And so it does have a little bonus over the musical power supply in the second and third order harmonic distortion down at low frequencies, but it's also, 100, it's almost double the price. And so mainly I would say that if you need more taps, this might be a good solution. If you're okay with just an 8 ohm tap, either the musical power supply or the Haybuer are good choices. The Haybuer does give you the option of a 4 ohm tap. And I don't feel like there's a lot of 16 ohm speakers out there, so, this isn't a bad transformer by any means. But for, the price you're paying, I guess you're getting a little bit more cleanliness here at 4.5 watts. That's kind of the main thing this one brings to the table. And still got the really good frequency response that both the Haybuer and the musical power supply had. So again, this is a 4.25 pound transformer that's in the 230 to 250 range, depending on where you get it. So let's turn this thing off and swap in another transformer. We're going to go with the little baby Hashimoto next. Okay, so this next run is going to be on the little transformers that the customer sent with me to use that I was a little skeptical of, and I wanted to do some testing on them before I drilled the chassis and just installed, rubber stamped using these. And they are the little 7-watt potted Hashimoto transformers, the H-203-S. And they're right at the same price as the EI Core 20-watt transformer. And these weigh 3 pounds, which are about the same weight as the egg cores, but they're potted. And so you add in the weight of the potting material plus the can. So anyway, let's look at what these little guys do. Here we show the power versus THD. It's got, nice low distortion along underneath this green line is like the drive line of the input signal, and then this is the THD is the red. And right here at 4 watts, we've got 1% THD, which is fine. It's right where we saw both that musical power supply, Edcore, all of them are right around there. But then, like the Edcore and the musical power supply, it turns up sharply at 4 watts. And then at 4.5 watts, you're over 1.5% distortion. And, it's kind of in this steep line, which normally isn't a good place to be. This is more for, if a transient hits in this power range, it's not going to be the end of the world, but you don't want to be listening to the amp like in this range. You want to be listening more down in here. And that's probably true with this amp in general, so I don't hold that against it. Here's the problem. The frequency response. It's not exactly level across even the mid-range. Like if you look at this is 0 dBs, by the time you get down to 100 hertz, you're down, 0.3 dBs across this range. And it's a little, it peaks right up in here around 10K. And then at 20K, it's only rolled off a half a dB, which is good. But then on the bottom end, when you're at 20 hertz, it's down 3.5 dBs. And the 3 dB turn point is probably around 22 hertz, where a lot of these other amplifiers, the 3 dB down was at like 12 hertz. And so it actually starts rolling off even here at 100 hertz. When you get down to 40 hertz, which most even small bookshelf speakers go down to 40 hertz, you're down a whole dB at 40 hertz. And honestly, I'm not shocked. They're small transformers. I didn't expect them to have really stout low frequency response. Gonna talk with the customer and see what he wants to do. I mean, if he wants me to, use these transformers because he has them, yeah, I can do it. But I don't think that they're an ideal fit for this. And I really find it odd that someone suggested that he use these on a 300B amp, which the low frequency roll off would be much worse at higher wattage levels. So let's look at it on the scope. And at 1K, it's got a nice profile. It's got, a clean overshoot, a little bit on the front nose of the square wave, but this is nice and flat. And when we go to 10K, see what that looks like. That's not bad either. That's cleaner looking than the Edcore was, but still not quite as good as the Haybuer was. And then if we go back to the THD versus frequency, ran into the same problem. The software won't allow you to run it if it sees over 25% distortion. And at even 25 hertz, it was going past 25%. And so I had to squeak it in at 26 hertz. And at 26 hertz, it's got 24.5% distortion. And even when you get down here to 40 hertz, you're still at 12.5% distortion. That's quite a bit. And it does, even here at 100 hertz, you've got 2% over 2% distortion, but then, it kind of levels out here about 200 hertz, and then it's got this little trough here. So in this middle range here, it's fine, but down here in the low frequencies, it's definitely struggling. And then if we look at the second order, it's got a little more second order harmonic distortion than third order, but otherwise, this transformer that's half the price is outperforming it. And the Haybuer definitely is. And if you were insistent on getting a Hashimoto, I honestly would get their EI core. That definitely seemed to me to perform better than this potted one does at the same price point. So there we go. That's where we're at. And again, this is, that's going to be audible. It's going to have a weak bass response. You're going to hear that, especially considering that even at 40 hertz, it's down a whole dB. That's a lot for, not going down that low. If I was down 1 dB at 20 hertz, I wouldn't be too concerned. There's not a whole lot of music down there, but there's quite a bit of stuff going on in the 40 to 50 hertz range, and it's definitely rolling off here starting at 100 hertz, and even in this range it's down a little bit from up in here, and this transformer is probably going to sound a little on the bright side. So that's that little transformer. Let's wire in the next contestant and see how it does. Okay, so now we've got the ISO Tango FC12S connected, which is a 12-watt potted transformer. These come in at $280 a piece. They weigh 3.5 pounds, and they're rated at 12 watts. They can be 2.5 or 3.5K. We've got it hooked up at 3.5K, and you can see down in this range here, it's got super low distortion. And then here at 4 watts, it's just under, right at 1%. And then like some of these other smaller transformers, it does kind of turn up here right at 4 watts. And still got less than 1.5% distortion at 4.5 watts. So that looks fine to me. Come over here to the frequency response, and you can see we got a totally different story from that little Hashimoto. This has got a very flat frequency response through this whole range here, and then starting at, we're down at 40 hertz. The very peak right up in here is at the 0 dB point, and then as you go across here, when you get down to like 30 hertz, it's down about a quarter of a dB, and then it's down right at 1 dB at 20 hertz. That's probably not going to be audible with anything except like huge speakers that really go down low. Most bookshelf speakers are going to stop about here, and it's down less than right at 0.2 dBs, which is like nothing. And then here at 20K, we've got 0.6 dBs down. So again, really nice frequency response curve. Here's what's really nice. Here we are looking at the square wave, and you can see how really nice the square wave looks. It's got this almost vertical line on the front edge, which is really hard to come up with. And it's got just a tiny bit of overshoot, and then this is really nice and smooth. And then when we come in here and do the 10K square wave, nice, smooth, round front edge, and the top's totally flat, no gymnastics. So, really nice looking clean square wave out of this thing. And then here on the THD versus frequency, down here at 20 hertz, where that Hashimoto was just going off the chart, we got 13%. And then we come down here to, the same like 26-ish hertz that we were seeing with the Hashimoto was almost 25% distortion. We've got 4.5% distortion. And then by the time you get down to 60 hertz, it's under 2%. And then flattens out from there. So really nice looking THD versus frequency curve with this Tango transformer. And there's our second order harmonic distortion. And there's the third order. Overall, a nice transformer. And again, if we went up to the FC20, which we used on that other deluxe build, it would be even cleaner looking. But for this price point, this is a nice looking transformer. And especially, like I said, when we look at the frequency response, that's really nice. And this square wave is just beautiful. I mean, you can't ask for a nicer looking square wave than that. So there we go. There's the ISO FC12S, which is their cheapest transformer that they sell. And next, we're going to hook up their FC30 which was really designed for a 300B tube, but let's see how it does hooked up to this 2A3. Well, I'm glad I tested these transformers before I drilled the amplifier chassis, because I would have been really disappointed using these guys and then seeing the results and having everything all like permanently wired in. And yeah, I can't recommend these for anything. Their frequency response was bad. They had just crazy distortion, even like 200 hertz and down at 4.5 watts. And I was talking with my buddy Mystery Mark about, what could these be used for? Because the customer was like, yeah, don't put those on the amp since, you're saying they didn't work good. I'll go ahead and send you the money to put some Haboors on it because he needs the 4 and the 8 ohm taps. If he didn't need the 4 or 8 ohm taps, either this Haboor or this musical power supply would have worked good. I need to talk to Matt. He may be able to do these with dual output taps, which would be kind of nice. I know he's told me in the past that it does hurt the performance a little bit when you start adding extra windings and the way they interleave. And yeah, I leave that to the professionals because I'm not winding transformers. But he said there is an advantage to not doing that, at least with his process with these EI core transformers. If I was going to spend Hashimoto money, I would get this EI core. This guy really worked well, and you could, reconfigure it to use with different amplifiers. It's got 4, 8, and 16 ohms, so that would be a good option. And to me, they just look nice. There is this look of potted transformers that's pretty, but this little guy, if it was a 5K, 7K, or had that capability, even if it was capable of doing a 5K, I could see, using these maybe on like that little 6BM8 amp, something like that, to upscale it. But as it is, there's just not a whole lot of use for this, 2.5K to 3.5K 7-watt transformer. Most of the tubes that look for that kind of impedance or load are, 5, 7-watt, 8-watt amplifiers that are not going to work well with this transformer. So, sorry Hashimoto, you dropped the ball on that. And the little Tango did really well. I was impressed with the square wave. It looked beautiful. I really liked the way the low frequency THD was so low. Just, yeah, typical Tango performance or ISO performance. Just, yeah, it's there. Especially for 12 watt, for their bottom tier. That's the cheapest transformer they make that still performs like that. And like I said, I've listened to it on my EL34 amps. I know how good they sound. I'm sure they would make a nice 2A3 transformer as well. I know those FC20s sounded really good on that other 2A3 I built. And yeah, you can decide if it's worth spending another $200 for a pair of those. Anyway, this definitely was worth doing. And like I said, I'm really glad that I didn't just install these on the amp like the customer wanted, and then everybody would have been disappointed. So he went ahead and said, yeah, well, let's go ahead and put the Haboors on it. So I got to get these bead blasted and painted black so they match the other transformers and get them installed, and I'll be done with that 2A3. The next time we're going to be looking at doing these big transformers. I want to see what the FC30 3.5 look like or perform like, because I'm thinking about building I'm enjoying this 2A3 amp so much, I'm thinking about building like a top shelf 2A3 amp. I've already got some EML output tubes. I've got some really good RCA red base driver tubes, and I ordered just got sent a mesh plate 5U4 EML rectifier tube that I got to tweak the power supply a little bit to meet their specifications, but I think it's going to be pretty simple to get that all worked out. And if I'm going to put those nice tubes in it, I may put the FC30s on it and just go ahead and spend the money. I know it's $1,000 for a pair of transformers, but hey, it's just money, right? Let's do it right. So anyway, hope you're enjoying this shootout. I know I've been having fun with it, and I've learned a lot. I'm feeling really good now about using these little 20-watt musical power supplies on my Bass 300B after seeing their performance. I'm really, impressed with these Haboors that I'm putting on my, 2A3s that I'm selling, and yeah, just kind of verified what I already thought. So anyway, if you're enjoying this content, please subscribe to the channel. Please like the video. Thanks to all you Patreon supporters. Thanks to folks like Scott that this is his second amplifier he's bought from me. So I really appreciate you, Scott, and yeah, just all of you guys. This wouldn't be possible without you. So until the next video, have a nice day.